And then we'll ask Ms. Conway to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Shall we call the roll, please?
Mr. Radley?
Here.
Mrs. Butcher Conway?
Here.
Mrs. Singer Erdley? Mr. Lesby?
Here.
Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mrs. Tingle Sames? Here. Mrs. Tackett? Here. Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. And I had spoken with Polly and knew that she would be out of town this evening. Some prior event that she had going on. Each of you should have a copy of the minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting, July 26th. If you'd like to take a moment to look those over for any possible corrections or additions.
Make a motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Also in your packet, you should have received our copy of our latest check register. If you would indicate if you received that register. Thank you. Public comments tonight. We make up in quality what we do not have in quantity. Artie? Artie, we're ready for you.
Hi, Artie. How you doing? Glad I heard from you. I got it in my head, Artie. Thriller.
I know, I did too.
Thriller.
Well, she emailed it to me.
Yeah.
And I asked her when she was coming to council. And then we saw you walk in the door. We were like, they're here. So I printed it.
Everybody's got it. You're official.
I'm here tonight just to request our dates for Thrill to Give. This is our 8th year, and we keep growing. And those are the paper that I handed out just kind of has a little agenda on what we will be doing. Our dates are October the 21st. We're doing it a week early. We did it a week early last year, and it worked out really, really well for us. And it also keeps us from competing with Fayette County's Thriller, which is closer to Halloween on that following weekend. Our rain date is October the 22nd. I think we have all of our paperwork in and ready to go. So that is my request. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them.
Need a motion, Mayor?
It is a fun event. We've got all the proper paperwork, so a motion would be in order.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Oh, thank you very much.
We approve the
Okay,
Thriller
we
Day.
hope to
Let's
see
vote
everyone.
Let's vote on it.
Oh, okay.
'Cause they may not approve this. I'm not sure.
Already go on, Lee.
No, I'll stick around for the vote.
Opposed? It passes.
And we're always looking for our celebrity guests to judge the costume contest. So that was, I think we raised several $100s last year for the Amen House just with the costume contest, and it was a lot of fun. I think you have done it before. It's a lot of fun, so we might be knocking on your door. So if you're dying to do something for us, we'd love to have you as a guest judge.
Now,
So
if you have a
can
pie eating contest like pumpkin pie, Tom will get in on that one.
Okay.
Judge it.
Well, we haven't thought about that, but that might be a new thing we have to do.
And I have experience judging pies.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Artie.
Thank you, Artie, very much. Just a couple of mayor's comments. I know that will disappoint some council members.
Oh, no.
Mike, this is the highlight of the meeting when I do mayor's comments. So typically, I have a whole page full, but tonight they're briefer. A couple of things that I wanted the council to be aware of. Over the last couple of weeks, you've probably seen a couple of articles in the local paper covering our work with the Georgetown Scott County Revenue Commission. And Scott Hall has been on the job now long enough to where he has rebuilt our financials all the way back to the day the Revenue Commission was started. We had some years where we may not have had the tightest management of the Revenue Commission, but what I can tell you tonight is that the Revenue Commission Director, Scott Hall, is a top-notch professional. We're putting in place policies and financial reviews and collection efforts and ticklers to make sure we don't ever get close to a statute of limitations loss again. I feel much more confident with Scott Hall helping us and the direction the Revenue Commission has taken over the last year. I have high confidence in that now. As a part of what Scott promised us he would do was to go back to when the Revenue Commission started, look at all of our collections, look at all of our billings, and try to determine if we let funds get away from us, that we would have had a chance of collecting. And those numbers have been reported. We acknowledge that sums older than the statute of limitation are beyond our capacity to collect. The very positive that I take away is that when we go back to the beginning of the Revenue Commission through today, our collections rate is 99.58%.
Wow, that's good.
We have checked with other communities of our size and complexity. Not everyone was willing to share that data with us. But we do know that the city of Nicholasville's collection rate is 90% and maybe a few change. It's 90%. We had another community respond and their collection rate was in the 91 or 92% range. I'm going to ask Andrew to send each of you all the PowerPoint presentation that Scott recently provided for the commission. It shows all of our outstandings aged, where they come from. It is a beautiful piece of analysis that will help you understand our history with the Revenue Commission. In that PowerPoint are also the recommendations for how we tighten up this operation, what Scott's already put in place and what he will be adding in the future. So let's make a note to send that PowerPoint out. Dan covers those meetings, Amanda, but if you'd like that email, that PowerPoint, we'd be glad to provide it to you as well.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay. Also, just a comment, we've seen some really strong news stories here lately about the Georgetown Police Department's drone acquisition and how quickly it became very successful. Most of you have probably seen the infrared drone footage of a person hiding on the roof during a burglary, and this drone let us do remarkable police work. And I think it's a good example. The department is putting in place the policies that will govern the drone's use, because they intend to be very careful to make sure that we don't trip over any privacy issues. Also, I've watched some of their training, and this is an expensive piece of police equipment. It is in no way a toy, and they treat it as such. So, and also to remind the council that we did not have to buy that with general fund dollars. We bought that with drug forfeiture money. So it didn't even cost the citizens of Georgetown directly. Also, proud to report that we finally have moved building inspection, electrical inspection, and code enforcement into the structure at 125 West Clinton.
Good.
It took some work and a whole lot of discussion to get all that to happen. 3 different departments, 3 different cultures, Coming together under one roof is always a challenge. I'll give credit to John Shirley, was our general contractor and did a really nice job for us. Tolerated some change orders and some things that, some personal preferences that emerged late, and we were able to accommodate those.
Sounds good.
And then I'd also have to say that if I'd had to handle this project myself, hands-on, I probably would have walked away from it about 3 months ago because it's been that frustrating. I will give credit to Mr. Hartley because he slogged through it and kept slogging through it, and we are successful today.
And well under budget.
And under budget. So, we still have a little bit to do down there, but if you're down by the old water
Yeah.
company building, drop in, take a look. I think you'll be proud at where we've housed these 3 departments. That will also free up the basement of City Hall so that as we begin to consider architects and perhaps construction managers to look at needed improvements to City Hall, as Millie looks over the plaster peeling off the wall, that we'll have part of the building already empty to help that process. And believe it or not, that's all the mayor's comments I have. I know, that's short, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Item 6 on, well, I have one more, I'm sorry. Arlene wrote it on the other sheet. We had talked about, council had expressed an interest in some of the services and the technology that Harshaw Train might be able to help us with in terms of lighting, more efficient street lighting, ways to assist us with other construction projects. And we've gone back and forth and tried to pick a couple of dates. Some council members thought it would be nice to go down there and see their facility and see some of these services. Given that it's on Blankenbaker Road, it's a lot easier for us to get to and get home fairly quick. The time frame that they would have in mind is arriving around 10:30, concluding at 2:30 with lunch included, and an opportunity to see some of their operations. They had given us a couple of dates. One I think is simply much too close for us to respond to, and that is the 24th. But they've also offered August the 31st. I thought if you all could check calendars, if there's, I realize all the council can't make this because it's a daytime activity and some of your job functions simply won't allow you to do it. But for those of you that can, if a core group of council,
I would like to go.
2 or 3 or 4, or all 8 if we have
can do
to,
it.
we'll declare a special meeting and take the press with us if we need to.
What day is of the week, is it?
Thursday.
Thursday, that's
It's a
good.
Thursday.
Good for me.
So if that fits a few of you, I'd be glad to go ahead and pin that down and let you all put it on your calendars, and we'll start making those arrangements for you.
I'll let you know whether I can or can't.
Good, and we'll get the word to Polly. And again, it doesn't have to be the full council, but those of you that can go, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is the end of Mayor's comments. Item 6 on your agenda, we have some guests with us today from TMMK to talk about a fairly significant transaction that I think it's tied to a $1.33 billion investment. Mike, Kim, who will address the council?
They're going to draw straws,
They're
Mayor.
going to draw a straw. I thought they might have had this worked out by now.
Well, good evening. Kim Minke, the Regional Director for Government Affairs for Toyota North America. Thank you all so much for our continued partnership to be able to take on this new addendum supplemental project to our Lexus incentive that we were successful in winning a few years ago. And we've had conversations about what that means. One of the last things to finalize the activity is a amended resolution authorizing those incentives by the council. The fiscal court also needs to do that, and they did that on their fiscal court meeting last Friday, and approved a resolution adding the supplemental project to the existing agreement. And that's what we're asking for this evening. I know, working with Andrew, we've got an amended resolution for that activity. But I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have before you take that action.
Kim, I can, from my perspective, I can say that continued investment by Toyota is essential to this community. We recognize that. And where incentives are appropriate tools and they've been appropriately planned, I think we're pleased to support those. We don't want to reach the day where, for whatever reason, a decision is made not to invest in this plant. So we've had this conversation repeatedly, and I've said it to council a number of times. What this Reborn initiative and our continued relationship with Toyota means to me is that we continue to be relevant in a significant way.
Absolutely.
And that is the important takeaway for us to understand.
Absolutely.
And I think council, I think most of you all have had an opportunity to sit with Kim and Mike or Jack and others and understand. We understood well the Lexus incentive package. Frankly, the additional incentive package for the Reborn investment is, in my opinion, a bargain. I thought it may have been much higher. And the fact that it's in the $5 million range, a total extension of the city's responsibility to affect a $1.33 billion investment is a
Small
bargain.
percentage, yep.
So are we ready for the resolution at this point? If there aren't any questions, we'd be glad to go ahead with the
You
resolution.
did very good.
Please.
Whereas the City of Georgetown finds that it is a legitimate public purpose of said city to undertake activities for the creation of addition to or the retention of jobs for residents of this community in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And whereas the Kentucky General Assembly in 2007 enacted KRS 154.25-010 to KRS 154.25-050, establishing the Kentucky Jobs Retention Act for eligible companies to reinvest in its facilities for the creation and retention of a significant number of jobs. And whereas this program provides state incentives to eligible businesses which remain in the Commonwealth, thus creating and preserving jobs for Kentuckians. And whereas the program encourages local governmental authorities to participate in these inducements for businesses within this jurisdiction. And whereas the City of Georgetown finds that offering the local inducements authorized by the KJRA for the purpose of creating and or retaining jobs is in furtherance of the public purpose of said city and will benefit the City of Georgetown by preserving sources of tax revenue for the public service provided to the citizens of Georgetown. And whereas Toyota Motor Manufacturing Kentucky Incorporated applied for the benefits authorized by the KJRA for its manufacturing plant located at 1001 Cherry Blossom Way, Georgetown, Scott County, Kentucky project, and whereas the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority approved a KJRA project for Toyota Motor Manufacturing Kentucky Incorporated Company on May 30th, 2013, after receiving approval for local inducements from the City of Georgetown on May 20th, 2013, pursuant to Resolution Number 13-003, and whereas the company proposes to further supplement its project pursuant to KRS 154.25-050 through the acquisition, construction, rehabilitation, and the installment of additional improvements to the company's location in Scott County, Kentucky. And whereas the authority adopted resolution number KJRA F13-19488S1 on April 10, 2017, authorizing the addition of supplemental project to the project, subject to the terms and conditions of the first amended and restated job retention agreement due to the addition of the supplemental project. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the City of Georgetown as follows. Section 1. The City of Georgetown does hereby approve the granting of inducements to Toyota Motor Manufacturing Kentucky Incorporated for a project more particularly described in Resolution Number KJRA 13-19488S1 as approved by the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority, KEDFA, on April 10, 2017, pursuant to KRS 154.25-010 to KRS 154.25-050. Section 2, the state to local participation ratio in this grant of inducement shall be 80% state, 10% Scott County Fiscal Court, and 10% City of Georgetown. The City of Georgetown agrees to forego the collection of 1/2 of the 1% occupational license fee that would otherwise be due, which shall be retained by Toyota Motor Manufacturing Kentucky Incorporated for inducements under the Kentucky Jobs Retention Act for a new term beginning April 10th, 2017, and ending no later than 10 years from the effective date. Section 3. That the mayor of the City of Georgetown is hereby authorized and directed to execute, acknowledge, and deliver on behalf of the City of Georgetown any and all papers, instruments, certificates, affidavits, and other documents, and to do and/or cause to be done any and all acts and things necessary or proper for the granting of the inducements authorized by the acts and this resolution. Section 4. This resolution and the approval contained therein will only impact the eligible company's occupational wages and will not affect the occupational license fees of the Scott County Schools or the net profits tax imposed by any local taxing authority, including the City of Georgetown. Section 5. This resolution shall be effective upon its passage and approval.
Motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Motion's been made, Ms. Tackett. Is there a second?
Second.
You
Marvin.
got Marvin. He was just a little bit quicker. Any further questions of Kim or Mike?
Just a community and a industry working so good together, we want to keep it going.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Even though this is a resolution and it doesn't require a voice vote, given the magnitude of the issue, I'd feel comfortable with a voice vote.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mrs. Butcher Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you all very much.
Good. And I believe that you may also be on the agenda for the next item, or that may be just my item to do on your behalf. And council is aware that the discussion about these incentives was not a one-way street. This was truly a dialogue between the city and the county and TMMK about how we best meet the corporation's needs and how we meet the community's needs going forward. So to emphasize that this was a two-way street and a two-way conversation, we had long conversations with Will James about benefits that may flow back to the city, which were not normal business, but it was a really opportune time for us to have this expression between Toyota and the city about what we might also, in addition to staying relevant with our largest employer, what other specific benefits. And as we've discussed with the council, that includes 4 properties in Lanes Run Business Park that will be deeded to the city. The balance of an account that was originally used to purchase real estate as a part of the Lanes Run Business Park establishment. And we believe that balance is about $1 million. We accept that with the understanding that it must be used for real estate purchases. That was the reason the money was originally allocated corporately. So we can continue that allocation with those funds actually in our hands and our control. We also reached the conclusion for us to substantially improve the way we approach economic development in terms of market analysis, targeting industry sectors, and be able to do that on a more prospective basis is something we haven't had the resources to do in the past. I've said it before all over the state, when somebody gets to Georgetown or they get to Central Kentucky and they enter our network in Central Kentucky, which is bigger than Georgetown, the economic development directors do remarkable work together. If they make it to Central Kentucky, Jack Connor is the gold standard in doing that work. But what we haven't been able to afford is the market analysis and the industry targeting and things of that nature. So TMMK has agreed to provide the city and the county each with $100,000 a year. That is essentially a credit against what we would have been giving up. They're going to return that $100,000 for the city through the city to reside with Scott United. Scott County will do the same. Toyota will pay them through this credit thing that we've already worked out with the Revenue Commission, $100,000 that will flow through the county and then reside with Scott United. Scott United is our economic development, our industrial development arm, and that is the basis that we worked out this contribution on, that it would reside with Scott United. Scott United has taken several other very significant steps to anticipate this structure. We wouldn't dare propose that a full board of 20-odd people manage this economic development money. So Scott United has put together a seven-member subcommittee that will be specifically responsibility for determining how this $200,000 a year economic development money is spent. They will report to the board of Scott County United. We anticipate that we will draw and have executed a very specific contract between the city and Scott United about how this works and how there's a clear responsibility for the money and how we'll report activities back to the council and the court. And I would anticipate other legal documents to help us establish what that relationship is. But that's the way it will end up residing. Did I miss anything in there? I think that's pretty much what we agreed to, isn't it, Mike? Cam? So the next resolution outlines those things and gives you all give me the authority to execute those documents.
Resolution regarding contributions from Toyota Motor Manufacturing of Kentucky to the City of Georgetown and authorizing the mayor to sign relevant documents. Whereas Toyota Motor Manufacturing has memorialized several commitments to make contributions to the City of Georgetown in a letter dated December the 15th, 2016, which is incorporated as those set forth herein. And whereas among those commitments is a donation of several parcels of real property and adjacent to the Lanes Run Business Park intended to be used for economic development. And whereas the Toyota has further committed to donate $1 million to the city for acquisition of similarly situated property adjacent to the Lanes Run Business Park. Whereas Toyota is also committed to donate $200,000 a year for the life of the KJRA incentive of the funds it would receive under the KJRA incentive, equally divided between the City of Georgetown and Scott County, for and on behalf of Scott United Incorporated, for economic development purposes. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Georgetown, Kentucky as follows. The council does hereby accept Toyota Motor Manufacturing of Kentucky's donation of several parcels of property and in and adjacent to the Lanes Run Business Park, and the mayor is hereby authorized to execute, and the Georgetown City Clerk is hereby authorized and directed to certify thereto any documents necessary to effectuate the transfer of property pursuant to terms not inconsistent with TMMK's letter of December 15, 2016. And the council does hereby accept TMMK's contribution of $1 million for land acquisition, and the mayor is hereby authorized and directed to sign any and all necessary documents on behalf of the city, and the Georgetown City Clerk is hereby authorized and directed to certify thereto pursuant to terms not inconsistent with TMMK's letter of December 2016. The council does hereby accept TMMK's contribution of $100,000 per year for the life of the KJRA incentive for economic development purposes with terms and conditions regarding the appropriation and expenditure of funds to be subsequently approved by council.
You reckon I can get a motion for that?
Motion. I was gonna
Snap
give
on
somebody
it
else an
quick.
opportunity, but I'm just Johnny on the spot tonight.
You just not. Second, thank you. Chuck? Any questions about the other part of this two-way street? This is the part coming back to us. If not, if we could call the roll again, please. It's tricky on that, no?
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Mrs. Butcher Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Kim, Mike, I think there's been a lot of work done on this particular proposal, and most of the work wasn't done here. Most of the work, the heavy lifting, was done within the corporation to earn the opportunity for this to be in Georgetown. And it's our intention to continue to be a good partner for you so that you're able to earn those intercompany competitions on our behalf. So, thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to just say thank you to Jack for what he does for this community, and especially for this council. Everything you just discussed was written out. We went and sat down, and 99.9% was discussed every council member. We weren't left out in the cold on anything. I do appreciate that.
Good. And Mike, we'll invite you to, if you've got time, and we do like a civics lesson, to stick around for the rest of the meeting, and we'll have another item later in the agenda. Love to. Yes, sir. Thank you. Moving on with our agenda, item 7 under the city engineer, a pretty straightforward initiative, a municipal order approving the dedication of Scholl Drive extension. Scholl Drive is the road in Habitat Village.
Yeah.
And this is our acceptance of a short stretch of that.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes,
Is there more property that hasn't had the sewer line and everything completed yet? This is a different part of that?
this is their original site at Habitat Village, where we did a subdivision about 20 years ago.
Right,
So they're building
That
out.
Hickman and up in that area, yes.
okay.
So this is not the new site that we
We got
recently
issues
talked
there.
about. at
Okay,
Scholl.
got you. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
An order accepting the Scholl Drive extension as a city street and including it on the official city street map. Whereas the Georgetown-Scott County Planning Commission staff has reviewed the plats and inspected the street and found it to have been constructed to the standards necessary to be adopted as a city street. Now therefore, it is hereby ordered by the Georgetown City Council that the following streets are hereby accepted by the city and included in the official city street map. Cabinet 11, slide 78, dated 9/19/2013. The plat name, Scott County Habitat for Humanity, Scholl Drive Extension, 6 lots. The following is a summary of the street inventory. Name, Scholl Drive, length 200 feet. Description starts at Habitat Drive and ends at the turnaround.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval of that street being dedicated to the city?
Motion, Mayor.
Thank
I'll second.
you. And second. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, we have another pretty happy resolution for the council, and we have finally gotten the grant documents for the CMAQ grant. And we have a resolution accepting the CMAQ grant. Millie, we've been in contact with them. We hope by the next meeting that we will have received the paperwork for the TAP grant,
I was gonna ask.
and we can take similar action, but we just haven't received it
Good.
yet.
I was gonna ask. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
A resolution of the City of Georgetown accepting congestion mitigation and air quality grant funds from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and authorizing the mayor to sign all relevant documents. Whereas the Federal Highway Administration through the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet has awarded the City of Georgetown a congestion mitigation and air quality grant in the total amount of $300,200 for Cardinal Drive improvements, and whereas the attached memorandum of agreement covers the design phase award of $136,000, and whereas the total award amount includes future phases totaling $867,200, and whereas the grant agreement requires a 20% match. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Georgetown that the Georgetown City Council does hereby ratify and adopt all statement, representation, warranties, covenants, and agreements required under the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Grant, and does hereby accept the funds granted. The mayor of the city is hereby authorized and directed to sign any and all necessary documents on behalf of the City of Georgetown, and the Georgetown City Clerk is hereby authorized and directed to certify thereto. This resolution was approved by a vote of the City Council, City of Georgetown, on the 14th day of August 2017.
Make a motion for approval, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Motion's been made.
Second, and question on, with the 20% match, where will that come from and what will it be?
It's largely cash, I believe, and we had budgeted for it.
Okay. All right.
I think on the TAP grant, we may have even upped the ante and raised our
We did.
contribution
We
to
did.
25% to make our
Make
application.
it look
Yeah,
better.
I
yeah.
remember,
Yes.
I remember that. When will it start?
These things don't move quickly.
These things-
Boy, they
We've got the
should have
commitment
an answer.
now, so I assume that'll give us a go-ahead to hire the design engineer and then construction to follow design. Under item 8 on your agenda, municipal, under the fire department, a municipal order approving surplus items.
We didn't do a roll call, did we?
We had a first and second, and I had a
Oh, roll
question.
call. We didn't have a
do roll
And,
call.
and the answer to your question, I believe, is
Trying to help you out.
Details,
Trying to
details.
help you out. We want everything to be right.
All
Well-
in favor?
the total is the 1 million, so we're responsible for 20% of that.
And cash.
I'm sorry, question? Go ahead.
Real quick, before we actually vote on this, this is a very important item that we're getting ready to vote on.
Extremely.
And for those people that aren't, or for those that are either watching on TV or will read about this in the paper, can you briefly explain so everybody understands?
Yes.
This is a critical item.
This begins to get at one of our most vexing morning and afternoon problems with traffic flow around the schools. Cardinal Drive is simply got way too much going on for what it is. It's 7/10 of a mile long. It has a middle school, a ninth grade center, a high school, a county park, an 800-home subdivision, the animal control shelter, all in 7/10 of a mile. And it simply wasn't designed for that. So 2 years ago, when we were so concerned about the beginning of the school year, we knew we had to do something. So we took a pretty bold step and made Cardinal Drive one way twice a day, in the mornings and in the afternoons. And it has helped. It's helped a lot. But it's helped at the expense of police overtime. Frankly, we're making this solution work through spending police overtime. It's structurally not the best solution for us. So we first had the idea, and a year ago, we submitted a grant to a CMAQ grant with the intention of 3-laning all of Cardinal Drive. And we were not funded. We were not successful. And they said that the magnitude of that project just completely was greater than the funds they had to give to a lot of communities. So when we went back and applied this year, we scaled it back to do the things that are most important for us, and that is improve the intersection at Long Lick and Cardinal Drive, dedicated left turn lanes with stack room, and the right signalization we thought could help us reduce police overtime needed there. And then in the design phase, there are 2 areas of Cardinal Drive, I think in front of 2 of the schools, where it will be 3-lane to accommodate traffic getting over or a bus getting around, something of that nature. So it is a big deal, Mark. I appreciate you you drawing attention to the fact that it's our effort to give a more permanent solution to the morning and afternoon school problems we have on Cardinal Drive. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you all for bringing that back to me. Chief, we're now ready to talk about a municipal order approving some surplus items.
I think you all had the list of items, and it's just a list of stuff that we need to get actually on the auction site that Tracy has. It's several pieces of equipment that have kind of run their life.
Pretty straightforward. There a motion for approval?
Motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Chief, you're also ready to purchase some extradition tools, and that was something that we talked about a lot in preparation for your budget.
It was in our, it was a capital item in our 17-18 budget. We had budgeted $40,000. I think the total for both sets, because we actually are going to purchase 2 sets, is $37,291.50. So it was under what we had budgeted for. But it'll actually be 2 sets of extrication tools that will take the place of 2 older sets.
Thank you. Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Any questions for Chief on those tools? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Item 9 on your agenda, listed under Human Resources, is a municipal order approving the purchase of a payroll processing system. We have for years, at least since I got here, we've been using ADP, and I have heard daily complaints about ADP, not just from here, but from a lot of merchants who complain about the service that they received. Megan has done a lot of research and has found a provider that we think can meet all of our needs. We're excited about the fact that they've got 5 dedicated service personnel that will be assigned to our account and will understand our issues just a little bit better than being constantly escalated by a help desk that didn't seem to know us. And what makes this even easier to do is it's less money than ADP. So we'll think we'll get a significant boost in service, and we will spend less money in doing so.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
And second, thank you.
I like easy.
You like easy, and this with those ideas becomes real easy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Also, kind of a fun purchase on number 10 is the police department. We have a municipal order approving the purchase and training expense for a new Canine. And as we discussed during the budget cycle, what's remarkable about this is the biggest cost is to train our human.
Instead of the dog.
The dog is not inexpensive, but the big cost is to train our people. So we have that municipal order. I think we budgeted, no, it's 12.5. And Chief, I think we budgeted 15. I think so. So.
I'm on a roll. Motion.
Motion, thank you.
She's got
Thank you,
somewhere to
Mark
go.
with the second. We're going to the dogs here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
What
Thank-
type of dog is it?
Do you have an officer picked out to, Michael Scott? Cool.
Excellent. Item 11 on your agenda, you'll recall from our budget discussion that we asked permission to buy one more
Yep.
side load
Yes.
garbage truck. It will initially be a backup unit for us, so we don't have a problem if one goes down. But we know we're on the cusp of having to add a 4th route for the one-armed truck, and we will already have it. So it's a pretty expensive little deal.
Yeah, it is.
$257,650 for a 2018 Auto Car ACX 64. with the New Way Sidewinder garbage bed. That amount's budgeted and anticipated, and is that a motion, Ms. Conway?
Yes, it is.
Thank
I'll
you.
make a motion.
Second.
Thank you, Marvin. Mitty makes the motion.
I have just a general question on those versus the rear loaders. I know the idea is to get less people, so it's less cost that way. But are they, I hear a lot about the arms going down on those because they are used so much, the hydraulics break down. Are we having any of those kind of problems with them?
You know, we've had mechanical breakdowns of other types, but I'm not sure Robert's told me anything about
That's usually
the
what
arm
I've
itself.
heard. It's the arm, the repetition of the action of the arm that's breaking down, so I just wondered.
And typically, some of these items that involve certain staff members, I kind of get them together the afternoon before the meeting and determine who needs to be here and who can have the evening off. Robert normally likes to be here, but if you aren't aware, Robert had a tragedy in his family as well.
Sorry.
Robert lost his sister in the last few days. So he's not here tonight for that reason.
Well, it's definitely not a question that needs to be answered tonight, but just in the future, if just,
Sure. He could update us on what our maintenance experience is on
yeah,
this.
absolutely.
Surely
Be great.
there's some warranty on parts too, you know,
So,
a new vehicle.
for those that are paying attention, we had a motion and a second. Did we vote on the garbage?
No.
No, we didn't.
We did.
Mayor.
Would you all like to vote on the
We're
garbage?
almost there.
It's up to you.
All in favor,
Gotta
say
call it,
aye.
Mayor.
Opposed? Thank you. Mike, I may be right on this over-under. Andrew and I always discuss the over-under for every meeting, time-wise, and
Well, you know what pulled us out, don't you?
Don't jinx it. You making the motion about 4.
Next time, Connie said I'll make motion for everything on the agenda. Everybody wants a second? Let's go.
it's got a
Do it that way.
you know, some places use a consent agenda for items that don't need discussion, but we're not quite there. A couple of items. Under city attorney, we have a municipal order approving our contract for our internet and phone service with Spectrum. Remarkably, it's been about 3 years since we did that contract.
Can't believe it.
And I think Andrew has negotiated a pretty good opportunity for us to push out fiber optic from here to all of our remote locations,
Good.
which will give us significantly faster speeds.
Make our phones more reliable.
Phones more reliable, a minimal additional cost for going to that fiber optic, and the construction at no cost.
It's good.
So be glad to have Andrew answer any specific questions about that contract, but we've been from here to there and back with these telephone and cable providers, and
Slowly getting there.
we've had to work with them with some pretty strong action and language, but we seem to have a team working with us now that's pretty responsive, and they've actually been better than they have in the past, so.
It's the same thing.
Three-year contract?
5-year, but it's annually renewable every year, so technically it's 1 year at a time. 1 year at a time.
Is that
You
option
like-
up to us, or is that option up to them, or both?
It's up to us.
Okay.
You feel good about it, Andrew?
Oh, yeah.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
Andrew, all you had to do is, oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
If there are no questions, motion's been made and seconded. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
It is Time Warner, though.
I know.
No, it's not.
Item 12B on your agenda is probably is one of our most significant pieces of business tonight. Most in the public are not even aware of this issue. We have in place an electric utility franchise ordinance. that has been in place for almost 20 years. It was enacted in 1997. The ordinance had an expected life of 20, excuse me, 20 years. So it expires this year, and we must have a replacement ordinance in place. And we also have to have had time to bid. By the word bid, I mean us take our proposal and put it in the newspapers for the electric franchises to consider if they're going to accept our proposal. I've had a chance to go over this with most council members, but since this is the first time we've discussed it completely in open session, the history here is that the ordinance that the city of Georgetown passed in 1997 was similar to some other cities around us. And that ordinance called for a franchise utility fee. That ordinance called for a 3% fee on the utility bill to be collected by KU from the user, and those funds remitted to the city. The city's original 1997 ordinance only stipulated that the 3% be collected on residential and commercial categories. The ordinance was silent about industrial uses and industrial properties. 20 years ago, without our knowledge, Kentucky Utilities worked with the Public Service Commission, and the Public Service Commission determined that the rate cannot be applied only to 2 categories of users. It must be equally applied to 3 categories. And in the Public Service Commission's vernacular, or the way they define these things, they have a category of residential, commercial, and industrial. So they insisted that through Kentucky Utilities' tariff schedule that is approved by the Public Service Commission, that they equalize that taxation. What KU elected to do was to take the amount of proceeds that would have been generated by charging 3% on residential use and 3% on commercial use to establish the total revenue that they expected the city to get for that particular year. Then they backed into a rate mathematically to spread that over all 3 classes of users. We became aware of this practice as we began doing the research on renewing this ordinance. So the electric utility franchise fee is important to the city in that it generates some revenue, as does our cable franchise ordinance, which is written at 3%. Given that Kentucky Utilities and the Public Service Commission had chosen to interpret our ordinance for us for 20 years, as we go back, we learned that the rate, the electric franchise utility rate, was extremely volatile. It bounced anywhere from 0.5 to 2.85, all over the board. We made an effort internally to take some of the volatility out of that electric franchise utility fee, which again jumps all over the board for reasons that KU can explain to us. It's very Byzantine, and it's even harder to make the actual number, the numbers that are the outcome of that match the explanation. But To give the council the best information that we could find, we did 6 years' worth of analysis of Kentucky Utilities' total billings for the community, inclusive of all categories. And we looked at what that rate would be if we trended it in a linear line rather than one that spiked. We just look for, we want to understand where this rate resides on a trend line so that we can deal with it in that fashion. Because dealing with it when it's completely volatile is a little bit difficult. What we found is that going back through 6 years of total electric billing for the city of Georgetown and looking at our revenues from the utility fee, the trend line is 1.18%. Over the last 6 years, if we apply 1.18% to total billings, then we achieve the amount of revenue that we expected to from KU from those two categories. The 1.18 we think is a revenue neutral trend line for the last 6 years. Now that it's time to renew this ordinance, some real important things come into consideration. And there's been a lot of time and discussion and brain cells burned over the last 3 weeks about what is the most fair way for us to renew this ordinance and move forward, recognizing that the city has certain interests, but so do our citizens that actually pay this rate. The math that I would like for us to discuss tonight is, if the trend line shows us 1.18%, and we're looking at an ordinance for the next 20 years, I would like to recommend to the council, and I do so, I believe, with the support of the Finance Committee. We've really spent some time talking about this, that if we looked at increasing this rate by a factor of, my original idea was to come to the council with 1.5%, that being representing a 50% increase in what was a 1% trend line. Now that we know the true trend line is 1.18%, it is our recommendation that this electric franchise utility rate be set at 1.75%, which will affect a 48% change in the 1.18% trend line. We would also recommend that, and this was a council suggestion that we think is appropriate, that there be a 0.25%, a 25 basis point increase in that utility rate every 5 years, with a maximum during the life of this ordinance to be set at 2.75%. Now, I can say with confidence that none of our largest employers and none of our largest electricity users want to be in a position of setting this rate. And that is not their role, and I don't think any of our large users want to be in that role. I will say that in my discussions with a number of different businesses and individuals, that I can safely say that not everyone's pleased with this suggestion, and that some of our businesses, like we all do, we budget carefully, we plan carefully, we plan a year in advance. We frequently plan multi-years in advance, and I will say that this is clearly an unexpected additional expense. So I don't think it's a surprise that doesn't make anybody exceptionally happy. I think we're looking for a balance between what's fair to the city and her citizens, and what is in turn fair to our citizens and our businesses. And I probably won't make the council completely happy with this recommendation, and I probably won't make some of our corporate citizens completely happy with this recommendation. But that is my recommendation. We have precious little time to complete this exercise. I had promised, I had assured council members and others that they would have more time to deal with this issue, and frankly, the complexity of the issue and some personal circumstances caused me to be out for a little while, and we've had to truncate this process a lot. To make this schedule work, we would ask that we have first reading tonight, that we have second reading as quickly as we can, which would be Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock. If we give notice to the paper in the morning, we can legally do that. That would give us the time to immediately advertise it on Thursday, get it in the paper, so that it can be in the paper for a minimum amount of time before we expect the electric utilities to respond to us. We've also learned that the electric utilities have to get permission from the PSC to respond to our bid. So that's an extra step that they have to take after we complete our work. We do not have time for me to bring you first reading an ordinance that is not going to pass at second reading. That's just wasting a day or two that we don't have. I'll open this up for council discussion in just a moment and be happy to hear any comments you might have. What I'm going to ask you for when we complete our discussion is, if you're willing, I'd like to have a straw vote to make sure that the percentage that I have recommended is going to pass on Wednesday. If it's not going to pass, we don't have time to waste. So while you're not making a hard commitment with the straw vote, we do ask for your direction so that we can move forward and use our time as best as we can. That is my recommendation. I'll open the floor to council, and then if there's anyone from the audience that would like to speak to the issue, would invite them to do so.
Before you do, I want to add to that the ordinance that you have in your packet has been slightly modified. There was a provision in there that said that we essentially had the right to standard provision that's in just about every franchise, that within 90 days we have the right to set essentially whatever rate we want. We took that out and we said, this is the scale, maximum 2.75%. And then also those are the two changes, the 2.75% cap and the taking out of the language that gives us the right to change it.
Andrew, what would the effective date, when would the switch over actually take place?
Well, the current franchise ends September 17th, so we would time it to be September 18th. You can't have any gap, so.
About 2 months.
Yeah, and you can't overlap either, so, yeah, September 18th.
Every citizen in the community and every business in the community is affected. And we have some citizens here tonight, and we have some businesses here tonight. Mike, you and I have talked about this a little bit. Have I presented the issue fairly?
May I make a few comments?
Would you please?
Yeah, excuse me. First of all, I'd like to go back, Mayor, to what you said earlier in the meeting.
By the way, Mike Price.
Oh, sorry, Mike Price, Vice President of Administration at TMMK. So thank you for the opportunity to talk tonight.
Yes, sir.
But I'd like to start off and go back to some of the comments you made earlier about the long working relationship and good working relationship that TMMK and the mayor and the city council have always had. And we cherish that very much. We really do. And we don't ever want to do anything to damage that. And I think just from the topics that were on the agenda tonight is proof of how that working relationship has been and how we all benefit from it. So it's a very, very positive thing. So I don't want to diminish that at all. But I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity in my role as the Vice President of Administration at TMMK to at least, I think, make the council members aware, as the mayor said, does a business like, additional expense and on short notice? No businessman really does. And I understand that you all have a very tough job to do, and I understand from what I've learned along the way is the background on this and how it's come about and how complex it is. But I just wanted the opportunity to share with the council members that you got to do what you got to do, of course, and that's your all's job. But I can tell you from the numbers that we've seen and the impact that it's going to have for Toyota as an industrial user, and I'm sure other industrial users and all the users, as you said, it's across the board. For us, if you just look at if the rate were to stay the same, and we agree with your calculations that it's been on average about 1.1 to 1.2%. If you just took into account the rate increase that KU gives or gets almost every year, we did some projections out, and that alone at that standard rate of 1.18 is going to generate an additional tax bill for us of $4 million over 20 years. Okay, so you got a rate on top of a rate that's going to keep going up. And then if we took the pencil to paper for what the mayor just proposed here at the 1.75 and then a 0.25% increase every 5 years, and on top of that, it could mean another $12 million for us over the next 20 years. So you take both of those together, we're talking about $16 million over the next 20 years. So, and that's just one industrial user in the community. We've got other suppliers, but also residential and commercial are impacted to the exact same extent. Now, you've got a residential, a lot smaller usage of electric, but everybody's impact is the same percentage-wise. So I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you. Like I said, you all have to do what you have to do, but my hope would be that you do, seriously take into account the impact that it's going to have on electric users over the next 20 years. Okay? Thank you.
Mike, thank you very much. And in particular, thank you for the ability to have some tough conversations, frankly, and
good business is not always easy, is it?
No, sir, it's not. But regardless of the business, the communication matters, and thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
council has, while we haven't, this hadn't been on our agenda for a long time, the council has spent a lot of effort and energy to understand this issue. Andrew has provided you with the spreadsheet that if you'd like to look through it, it does show total electric usage for the city, and it shows income ranges based from a revenue neutral situation to the 1.5 to the 1.7 and all the way up to numbers much higher than that.
Follow the green average line, just for a rough estimate of what we expect. Without, that's not including growth either in the industry or population or in KU's rates. So
I will admit to the council and to others that I really, I worked hard to try and understand this recommendation and to ultimately make this recommendation. I do so knowing that some will perceive this as a surprise, unexpected revenue increase. It's not always comfortable sitting in this chair, Karen, but eventually you have to make a recommendation, and I'll live with that one.
Let me take a little pressure off of you.
Yes, sir.
I have a different perspective.
Yes, sir.
I believe that the council, when they did this ordinance back in 1996, was it?
97.
97, okay. That they understood commercial to be industrial included. And they were intending on setting the rate at 3%. That's the way I would have thought it back then. And then the Public Service Commission threw this wrench in the cog. And Kentucky Utilities decided on their own to short this city $15 to $18 million. Okay, we have a lot of infrastructure that's gone unrepaired because we didn't have the money. That's money that should have come into the city. So I believe going with 3% is what that ordinance said in 1997. And the people who paid less for 20 years, including myself, we just got off cheaper. We got a discount that we shouldn't have had. Okay? So I'm supporting a 3% rate just like it used to be.
Okay.
Across the board.
Thank you.
Mayor, I want to share some comments. I mean, I know at the last meeting that we were all taken, I guess, by surprise when we were presented with the information that there had been that shortage. And I guess the information that we were given did show that most communities around us were collecting 3%, if I'm not mistaken.
They were doing 3% of commercial and residential.
Okay.
When they've had to update their ordinance, most have gone to the flat 3%.
Okay. Right. And I know that the threshold is even higher than that, potentially, I think 5%, if I'm not mistaken.
The state maximum.
Right, right. And just from me serving on the finance committee and kind of hearing the discussion at the last meeting, and I understand where some of the council members feel like perhaps a higher threshold or a higher rate may be justifiable. I feel like that is a difficult pill to swallow. And I think that's why I came back and supported the 1.75 and felt like that was a fair and reasonable place to land versus taking it to the 3%. Would we like to have the additional revenue? Absolutely. Could we use it? Do we have a lot of needs? We're sitting in a building that's probably got a few $1 million worth of needs to it. But considering where we are and what's taken place, I think my limit's going to be at the 1.75%.
Okay. The other interesting element to this is one that I don't think we'll have to explore, but users that were in a category that was not mentioned in the ordinance, I would bet and have a pretty interesting legal case to make about should they have been charged anything for 20 years. And seeking refunds for what's available under the statute of limitations. So I think that there are a lot of legal questions that I don't think we're going to have to explore, and I'm thankful that we have relationships that will protect us from having to explore those, but I think we've got some real legal vulnerability as well. If we pursue this too aggressively. I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth, but that's just my concern. So the other issue that just in the back of your mind, in a moment, I'm going to ask us to conclude this and do a straw vote so we can see if y'all are willing to meet Wednesday morning and move this forward. The other issue that I just want, it exists in the same context as this question is in 2014, I think, right before this current council arrived, the council passed a gas franchise ordinance and elected to charge that 0% franchise fee. So we've got a cable franchise ordinance that charges 3%. We're looking at a solution to the electric franchise ordinance that's not revenue neutral, that goes to 1.75%. And we have a gas franchise ordinance that is at 0%. And I do not understand the equity of that. I do not understand that. And I think that there's an inconsistency there that somebody's going to have to help me understand.
Well, that's a benefit. That's at 0%. And hopefully that's appreciated by some of the customers here in the community. And the other thing that I would say, Mayor, that, you know, and I don't know how you tie something like that in directly to what we're discussing tonight. I mean, I know there's a bit of a correlation there, but, you know, the other thing that I would say is the county recently lowered their property tax rate, and, you know, hopefully that helps, you know, citizens and businesses throughout the community. And I think the Finance Committee is not in support of increasing our property tax rate. And obviously that's a decision the council's going to have to make. It's not up to the Finance Committee.
But that was the recommendation that we discussed.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So it's a difficult decision. You know, I may not have the best answer to it. All I know is I don't personally want to take it any higher than 1.75%. I think that's the limit and the max that I can tolerate anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, I had thrown out there the 1.5. So I'd rather it be 1.5, but I definitely don't want it to be 3. So I'd be happier with that, but I'd rather have 1.7 than I would 3%.
Karen, if I'm not mistaken, in that discussion, was 3% not the eventual threshold?
It was set up just like it is here with
I think 3% though was
2.5.
No, 2.75 came from the Finance Committee, because 3% is what had been discussed, and we thought anyway, all right, let's bring that down.
Start higher,
yeah,
lower.
Exactly. So we felt like that maybe that was a concession on the back end, was to keep it a little bit lower as well. That might be helpful. I mean, quite honestly, it is a difficult situation, and we're trying to establish some balance. We're trying to be fair on both ends, and at least that's the way I read it. Connie?
Well, exactly, because looking at those numbers, I realize, and I mentioned in the Finance Committee that it's revenue that's coming into our city, but I also realize that that's huge, and I'm not wanting to do that, but I definitely feel like that, like you said, we're sitting in a building that could use some work on it, and was trying to be fair with what we were doing. So I was pleased with the 1.75.
Yeah. I mean, and if somebody thinks taking a 0.25% bump every 5 years is too aggressive, I mean, I'm receptive.
Absolutely.
We have a version of this ordinance when things are this important and we've got to move, we'll sometimes have more than one ordinance in our pocket.
Yeah.
And we have a first reading of an ordinance that can be done that has the escalator in it, of the the
0.25.
quarter percent every 5 years. And we also have a copy of the ordinance that simply says the council can change it when they want to.
I personally wouldn't like that, because I like, let the community know what we're set at for the 20-year, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of these industries, that's gonna be budgeting.
Do
the
it
next-
once.
For one, yeah. I'm like Karen, I could've went with 1.5 or 1.75. A quarter percent means a whole lot on that financially right there, though.
Well, and I at this very moment find myself in the box that I tried real hard not to get in.
Well, we didn't mean to put you in
I know
there.
you didn't.
You
I know
know?
you didn't. It's the nature of the job. But the finance committee and I agonized for an hour, back and forth, challenging each other with discussions and questions about where this recommendation should be.
Right.
And I knew that I could get the support of 1.75. Now that a couple of folks have said they could live with 1.5, it's hard for me to sit in front of our friends and
Well, I didn't say I wouldn't support the 1.75.
oh, you didn't. I know you didn't. But it's an awkward. It's an awkward moment of what do I ask you all to commit to, and we have tried to walk a tightrope between being fair to citizens and being fair to our greatest corporate citizens, and also recognizing the city's needs. David and Connie, do we want to revisit the 1.5? This is an impossible conversation in an open meeting in front of in front of the world. It is an impossible conversation. This is what Amanda lives for.
That's what Amanda lives for.
Live in the dream.
So take your straw vote and see how you stand, and you can go from there.
Yeah, let me start on one end of the table and ask if Mark, can you live with 1.5% with an escalator?
Yeah. Yes.
Chuck, you'd prefer to see a higher rate?
I feel like we got ripped off for 20 years.
Yes, sir.
Well, we can't go back.
Connie, can you live with the 1.5 with an escalator?
I can compromise between the 1.5 and the 1.75 with an escalator.
Okay. 1.62?
0.5?
I mean,
Come on.
I don't mean to make it
serious.
difficult.
I know you don't.
I really don't. I want to be fair, but
I knew that you were not completely comfortable with the 1.5.
Right.
I knew that you were comfortable with the 1.75. So the 1.5 for right now, you're not that happy with.
that is correct.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
That's what you feel said.
Karen, do you have?
Awkward at all.
Not awkward at all.
Actually, I would prefer the 1.5 when the escalating, because it's a tax increase. No matter how you look at it, it's a tax increase. Whether the city needs it because they do, But regardless, it's a tax increase, so I don't know that I've ever voted for a tax increase, so I'd be much more comfortable. And even, I think of my business, it's a small business, and even that little bit, when you look up there and it says 48% at the bottom, you're like, oh my gosh. So,
It's the difference between, I think, 27% and 40.
yeah, and so, I mean, if I gotta have, I can bite off a quarter of a cookie, more so than biting off a half of a cookie helps, so. And you're bigger, so mine's gonna be very small, but it's gonna be painful, and yours is gonna be more painful. So all the businesses are gonna be affected by it. So, which affects, if you take it out of here and put it in here, it takes it out of the economy. So I'm more comfortable with 1.5.
Thank you.
That was a lot to say, 1.5, wasn't it?
That's okay.
Yes
That's
or
all
no,
right.
Karen?
This is different.
1.5.
Mayor, I just want to ask this question, and I understand your question, but I mean, would it be more palatable if it was at 1.75 with no increases for the next 20 years? Would that be, would that be more favorable? I mean, I think that's probably where I'm landing.
That's a whole percentage you don't have to deal with.
Yeah, and that's,
Well, I was gonna be
That's
here.
what we were just discussing.
175 with no
Straight
escalators.
20 years. Start all over again.
Now, everyone would have to understand that a future council
I totally understand.
change it.
could
Totally get it.
bring it up.
They could do that with any and all.
But they can do it with, right now,
Yeah.
with anything.
Well,
And-
we put that provision in there,
Right.
which we had in there originally, so. Taking that language out was sort of the part of the compromise for the escalator. Taking that, we reserve the right upon 90 days to re-examine that fee.
Thank you.
Can you tie the hands of a future council by,
No.
Now,
Tell them.
the way that it works, though, you gotta understand, is it's in the nature of a contract.
Yeah.
It's a 20-year franchise. Now, you can also say, well, we won't, so we didn't do a 20-year franchise, let's make that clear. It's a 10 with 2 5-year extensions. But what you're saying is, at a minimum, we got 10 years. Unless you put in their language that says, which is standard, at any point we reserve the right upon 90 days notice to change that by subsequent ordinance. So you've got to give yourself that power ahead of time.
So what are you saying, Andrew? What,
For 10 years, we'd be locked into a contract.
okay, that's,
Just to-
If you
for
didn't use
what
that
you're
language
doing.
back in, is my
Okay.
point.
Which might give our citizens a little bit of confidence to know that
Absolutely.
Yeah.
we will not revisit this.
So what I'm saying, I think, is you really got 3 kind of wiggle room points. You got what's the rate gonna be? You got what's the escalator gonna be, if anything, and whether you're going to give yourself the right to increase it in the future.
So
You play with those as you feel necessary.
can you put language in an ordinance that just says, after much consideration and due diligence, the council chose not to have any additional escalators for the next 20 years? Could that language like be in there so that if there's a whole new group in here, the city attorney at that time, if it's not you, could read it and say, hey, look, they gave that some consideration and they chose not to do it? I'm just asking.
I mean,
You can put anything you want in that ordinance.
Is that worthwhile?
I think so.
If not, you can be, I don't care, I'm just,
I mean, the council's intent can be stated clearly if necessary.
and you can state that for
Yeah,
us.
absolutely.
Okay.
The key is deciding, do you want that future flexibility during that 10 or 20-year period?
I would think during the 10 years, we could do without the flexibility.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you want to go 20 years on anything, because we don't know
We
what
don't know.
anybody's going to be doing in 20 years.
So
That's
we
just
can-
too long.
That's right, but we could say that's the intent. And that's the direction we could theoretically take tonight.
If you put the 10 in there, that you can't change it in the 10 years, but you can still put the intent of the council was not to do this for 20 years. It
Right.
still gives future
Right.
council in 10 years to say, well, who cares what they want it? This is what we need, and do that.
Right.
Yeah, if I'm a mayor 10 years after this person leaves here, I'm going to say, I could care less what he wanted.
Right.
I'm the mayor now.
There's a new mayor in town.
I don't think it's right for us to try to tie the hands of a future council.
Well, you can't tie it.
And I
They're going to
think
get to
there's
do what they
legal
want to do.
basis for that, isn't there, Andrew?
Well, because a franchise is a constitutionally recognized thing. What the Constitution says is that you are granting these utilities the right to operate under what's essentially a contract. You get to determine what that length of time is. We come up with the 10 years. You don't want something that's 3 years, because what's the point of going through this exercise every 3 years? You don't want 20, because that gives you
No
flexibility. So instead, what we come up with is we do 10 years with 2 optional 5-year extensions. So what you're doing is you're picking your risk point. And you can further temper that by saying, oh, by the way, if at any point during this 20 years we think that there's a problem, we reserve the right to adjust.
Yeah.
So you're not really tying your hands. But if you symbolically say, you know what, we want to send a message that we don't want that future flexibility there, and you take that language out, then you are kind of tying your hands.
Yeah. The reason I'm saying that is because if some future group needed to generate some revenue, a 1% or a 2% increase on the insurance tax, which we did before when we had to do it and it's sunset, would be far more significant than 25 basis points on this for the immediate need,
For the quick,
That's right.
which is why we went up.
So that's why I don't mind tying the hand, if we have to tie the hands for the next 10 years, so be it.
I can actually warm up more to the idea of the 1.75 if we have no increases for the initial 10-year period.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
can I put our Toyota friends on the spot?
Sure.
All right, you all will represent the largest segment of, granted, you're the largest amount, but you're also representing a large segment out there that we want to keep our economy striving and growing. So, you all like the 1.7, no increase for the next 10 years, or is it 1.5 with the increase continued? Which works, which works better? Because we do have the relationship with you and we do listen.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess so, since I asked for it.
You're going to get it.
Well, now you're putting me in a difficult position.
Yes, I am.
Because, like I said earlier, it's your all's decision. What I was expressing to you, which is much like what you said, Karen, as a smaller business, just wanted you to understand the impact. So I guess that's why you're turning around and asking the question. So, ideally, I would prefer revenue neutral.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
But a 1.75 for 10 years would be better.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
All right.
No, I'm just speaking for us. I don't want to speak for all
Right.
community. I can't.
Well, personally, I think it's better too, and I think it's better for all the citizens, all of them, whether it's residential, commercial, or industrial, to say, okay, this is what we're gonna have to live with, so we're gonna know
We
for
got
10
in front of
years,
us.
this is what
Right.
we're living with.
And the reality is, I think, anyway, that this would be locked in for the next 20 years. I know it could be tampered with, but
Yeah.
I don't,
I'd like that even
Tampered.
better.
tampered with,
Tampered.
You don't like the word tampered.
tweaked.
No, it can be
I mean,
challenged.
tweaked.
Tweaked
So,
down.
so David, yeah, I like that even better.
Okay.
What, not be tampered?
Well, that's the intent, Mayor.
Unless I'm hearing things wrong, not everyone is in, this is not going to be a unanimous vote. But it's a tough issue, and those issues are rarely unanimous, and people should have strong opinions. But I'm sensing an emerging consensus of 1.75 as a steady rate, with the intention that we not alter that rate for 10 years. And we may have language that encourages the second 10 years, but is not as prohibitive as what we want the first 10 years to be.
I think that's our best move, personally.
I want to make sure I understand.
Now, I want you to repeat it. We don't,
Yeah.
I want this
Yeah, because
understood.
I'm going to have to go upstairs and write this real quick.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep the structure of 10 years with 2 5-year optional renewals. We're going to say a 1.75 rate. We're gonna take out the 1/4% increases. We're gonna say 1.75 locked in for the first 10 years of the franchise, and then after that, we reserve the right to increase the rate as the council sees fit. Is that a correct summation
Well,
of?
I guess I don't know why you can't say for 20, that we're doing this for 20 years, and we're proposing it to 1.75% for 20 years, with the understanding that after 10 years, a council could come back and readdress.
I think that it is implicit in you stating that we feel like there should be 10 years at this rate. I mean, you could state, and yeah, we think it ought to be that for 20 years, but
How often do we come back and revisit the cable franchise?
we, just like, now, cable's a whole different animal because theoretically the legislature took away our right to put whatever rate we want. Although the Supreme Court just completely threw that out the window. But we have that same, reserve the right to change it upon 90 days,
Okay.
language. And, yeah, up to 5%.
I understand that some would think there's a basis for expecting a higher percentage. But if we let Andrew excuse himself for just a minute and bring us back an ordinance that indicates, I'm repeating myself now, but the 1.75, that we'd like to lock it in for 10 years, and I'm willing to say something about the second 10, understanding that we really can't control that.
I get it.
And that we, can you do that?
Oh, absolutely. Just, you all want me to go do that? Do you want to have that straw vote now, or am I seeing not?
Well, do you have to redraft it right now, or will it not be,
He's got to read
He's
it
got to have a
tonight.
first reading,
We got a
official
first
first
reading
reading
tonight.
tonight.
and it needs to be verbatim, I guess?
Well, we read ordinances by summary.
It'll take me all of 10 minutes max to redo the summary and redo the ordinance.
So,
But
Andrew,
both need to be done.
did we satisfy any public hearing requirements, or are there any related to this?
Or not.
Okay.
Why don't we stand in recess for 10 minutes?
It's a great idea.
Is that all right?
Do we need to take a straw vote?
Oh, well, let me,
You never really got to Millie or Marvin.
we really didn't get to Millie Marvin. Straw vote wise, if we
I'm for
bring
it.
back an ordinance, are you okay?
I'm for it.
Marvin,
I'm fine,
are you
yes.
okay with
Yes,
that?
for that
And-
10 years,
And
yes.
David, you're okay with that? And Karen, I know you were more hopeful for the 1.5, but you can live with that.
Without the increase, yeah.
And Connie and Mark, you can live with that?
No, sir.
No, sir, okay.
Here I go.
What do you want?
Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
We will stand in recess for about 10 minutes. This is rare for us, first time I think I've done it, 20 years, but
Time for
1.75, but no increases.
Called recess to go to the bathroom once.
We will resume. We are about 10 minutes, wasn't it? Maybe 12.
Not bad.
Maybe 12. All right. We will resume the council meeting.
I just wanted to ask one question about this, Andrew. I don't remember them discussing that, but you did.
From Vincent.
That's the standard language.
It's on
the right.
Drug offense, first time drug
With the meeting called back to order, we will now proceed with first reading of the ordinance that we discussed. Thank you. By summary.
An ordinance providing for bids for an electric franchise. Summary. Establishes for bid a non-exclusive electric franchise for the placement of facilities for the transmission, distribution, and sale of electrical energy within the public rights-of-way of the city of Georgetown for an initial 10-year period with up to 2 additional extensions of time of 5 years each. Establishes requirements for bid submissions, sets for the terms and conditions by which franchisees must operate within the city, including installation procedures, performance guarantees, regulatory compliance, liability insurance, and access to the franchisee's records, and establishes penalties for failure to comply with provisions of the ordinance, and establishes circumstances under which the city and franchisees may terminate the franchise, imposes a franchise fee of 1.75% of each franchisee's gross annual revenues from the sale, distribution, and delivery of electrical energy within the city of Georgetown, and establishes the terms under which the franchise fee would be collected, requires the 1.75 rate to remain in effect for the first 10 years of the franchise, after which time, if the city chooses to extend the terms of the franchise, reserves the right of the city to increase by ordinance the franchise fee to an amount not to exceed 5% of gross revenues with 90 days' notice to the franchisee. Provides for governance by state law, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for the examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324. Introduced and publicly read for the first time August the 14th, 2017.
Thank you. At this time, could we also ask the council to consider a called council meeting for this coming Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock? At which time we will have, we would anticipate second reading of the ordinance.
I can make it.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Showalter. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all for your work on a really difficult issue with a strong timeline.
Karen, can you ask Andrew the question that you kind of posed to me
Yeah,
in regards to the
Maybe.
timeline?
maybe. Thank you, David.
I just did what I was told.
Right back to you, Dave.
All right, after intermediate discussion, after the, in between your 10 minutes of changing, one of the things I talked about, is it really going to be beneficial of saving money over the long haul for the consumer if we don't lock it in or try to lock it into that 20 years instead of just the 10 years? Because if we go back and we do the 1.7 and then end up in 10 years, the future council comes back and adds then another 0.25% or whatever they want to add, then at the end of the 20 years, you're actually more than what we originally had intended at the 2.7.
So, you are correct. The way, and I'll draft it however you all tell me to, so the way I view the ordinance is, what you're really doing is you're writing a 10-year electric franchise ordinance, period. What you're saying is, however, at the end of that 10-year period, if we so choose, and only if we so choose, we can extend the terms of that ordinance for another 5 years, and then at the end of those 5 years, we can extend it for another 5 years. But at that point, we can say at any point after those 10 years, this ordinance is subject to whatever percentage we assume. You can also, at the end of the 10 years, say, we want a new franchise ordinance.
Right.
So I'll write it however you all want me to write it, but I was told to put 1.75 for 10 years, and after 10 years, the right to add back in the change.
You were told that,
I
but,
was told that.
but I think.
And there was a straw vote on it.
Oh,
I
well,
think there was a little bit of, maybe,
confusion.
yeah, but can it be locked in for 20 years? I guess,
Absolutely, it could.
well, I guess I was not quite understanding that part of it. Mayor, is that,
You have flexibility within the term to set whatever you want.
Just think of it this way, the last ordinance we had was locked in for
20 years.
for 20 years. So there's no reason why, if this is what we choose to do, that you can't lock this one in for 20 years. The advantage and the disadvantage, the advantage is you've got X amount of income that's going to come in. You're not going to be able to change that in 10 years for the city. But on the flip side, the positive side for businesses and residential, they are locked into this is their percentage for X amount of years. Now, your utility bills are probably going to go up, so the city's going to get a little more money over time because utility rates will come up and that tax is on that rate. But for 20 years, the businesses can plan this is what it's going to be. The residents can plan this is what it's going to be for 20 years.
Yeah, but there's one big difference between the old ordinance and the one we're proposing. And the old ordinance did not lock in a rate at all. It was volatile and it went
Right.
all over the place. So we're now trying to lock in and avoid that volatility. And I'm perfectly, David, I'm perfectly good with this for a 10-year period. I don't think we should do it for 20 years. I don't think we can predict that far down the road. Honestly, our circumstances can change dramatically in 10 years. Corporations, everybody's circumstances can change dramatically. And after 5 council terms from now, if they want to alter this, I wouldn't care if they did it. They would be reacting to the circumstances at that time.
You are, if you put 20 years in there, you are saying, unless you also put that other language in there, you are saying this rate shall not be changed for the next 20 years. You are unequivocally saying, unless someone defaults, and even then if you defaulted, you really, I don't know legally where you are, but you would be saying, we expect under all circumstances for there to be a 1.75% rate for the next 20 years. This is kind of cutting that in half and saying we expect it to be for 10, and then after 10, it's all subject to renegotiation. Or it can stay exactly how it is. All council has to do is pass one ordinance that says we hereby renew the terms for 5 years. There is some action required, no matter what. Council can't just ignore it because it's going to expire if they don't renew it. There's no automatic renewal provision in there. Council has to actively do something in 10 years.
But Andrew, even in these next 10 years, can council come back and change the ordinance if they wanted to?
No.
Okay.
No, they cannot. This isn't like an ordinance on code enforcement. This is a contract.
Okay.
And I think that I can get comfortable with that arrangement for 10 years, but I think 20 is a long, long time.
Well, I can get comfortable with 20 because if, as David stated earlier, if something was to happen that the income shifts or changes or we need more income, just like what the council did, and I applaud the council for doing that because I wasn't a part of it when it happened or when it came off, but they did increase the insurance tax and then were brave enough to sunset it and actually honor the sunset, so, which doesn't happen very often in government, to take a tax off. So I would be okay with the 20 years if there's enough support for 20 years.
Sausage is not to be made.
That's word for word. Don't like the sausage in public.
It gets messy. Sausage gets messy in public, but then it tastes better when it's done. Isn't that right?
Everybody knows what's in there.
That's right. It's government. It's transparency. It's supposed to know.
True.
Well, we were gonna lock it in at 1.75 with a 1/4% every 5 years for 20 years.
That was
The
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 Original,
Yeah.
we're not gonna do that.
I understand that, but that's what we were locking it in for 20 years. And it would end up being
2.75.
2.75 at the end.
But if you do it for 10 years, then you come back at another
Right.
10 years and you end up doing more, say you add another 2.7 on top of that, then actually in the end, for the 20 years, you've
Well, I'm just
paid
saying,
more.
I understand
Right.
what you're saying.
You paid more
Yeah.
than what the original at the 1.7 with the increment increases. So we went around the barn and we're,
Back to the door again.
Well, we can't predict what's gonna happen in 10 years.
What about that?
10 years is a pretty long term. It is when you look at a lease or any type of a contract or an agreement. I don't know, I mean, my intent was 20 years, but, you know, you hate to tie somebody up for a full 20 years. I hate to tie up someone's ability. I understand where the mayor's coming from. You know, it's just another one of these issues that you have to balance out. You know, and it comes down to a matter of opinion. And I honestly, I could go either way on it. I mean, I could go, the 10 years is probably my preference, but I could go the 20 years. You know, I don't,
We're locked at 10 for 1.75 with no increments.
yeah.
You know, we know for the next 10 years what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
That's our plan, but none of us know what tomorrow's gonna bring. I mean, we watch the news every day. So let's roll with what we got, and we'll address it in on the 11th year, or 9 years and 11 months, however long it takes, 90 days prior to,
keep guessing.
9 years,
Well, I'm being here, it sounds like to me.
7 months.
And what
I'm
is-
just saying.
What is frequently, for those who have been on the council for a long time, and I've been off and on and in different roles, I think what's likely going to happen in 10 years, when a franchise agreement comes up for renewal, that it's probably going to be done with a simple extension
Yeah.
and terms extended. And, of course, some might have thought that was what was going to happen this time.
Yeah, but Mayor, I can honestly say over my experience here, and it's been over 20 years, there haven't been very many times, this might be one of the exceptions, but I feel like there's an extenuating circumstance that, you know, there was a perception that there was a 3%, and, you know, as it turns out, it was somewhat less than that. But I've not seen this group increase on a revenue stream like that. We've had many opportunities on the property taxes, and we've consistently kept those intact. And I guess as a result from what we've done and what the county's done, we're the lowest in the state, and that's to be applauded. And the same thing with water rates. It's been a long time since we've been asked to do anything. We kind of sent a message, and I think it was well received, that we didn't want to be addressing additional rate increases. And they've looked for ways to become far more efficient. So, I mean, I understand where Connie's coming from. I understand where you're coming from. And hopefully collectively we can come to a consensus. And if 10 years is where we land, then I'm good with it. And I'll come back in another 10 years and maybe visit and at least speak on everyone else's behalf that, you know, if we can afford it, I may be
You'll
gone
be
too,
here.
but at least be an advocate to keeping it where it is.
I think also that you need to keep in mind too, that, you know, even the next, whoever else is here, is that the nail's hit on the head that KU is gonna raise their rates. They do, and that's gonna happen, and, you know, you're gonna feel that. So people in general are probably gonna be at the point where they're gonna wanna keep it there. Cause let's face it, they're gonna pass it on to the consumer, so.
Affecting everybody.
You know, 10 years for, you know, the next 10 years, we know what it's gonna be. And hopefully, I'm like you, I'd be advocating for it as well. But I'm so blessed to be back here in 10 years.
Well, I didn't mean I was gonna be back. I was gonna come back and visit.
You're gonna come sit on that pole.
I'll do that
maybe.
too.
Yeah.
Ride fire truck, no, good. But anyway,
I think it's been a great discussion, and you all have moved in a positive way. 10 years just makes more sense than 20. It just it handcuffs us for longer than what I think we should do. I think we have an obligation to some future council to give them that flexibility rather than take it from them tonight. And assume that they will be public servants and they'll make the best decision in 10 years, maybe with better information than we have tonight.
Me too.
So I feel like I have to ask the question.
Straw vote.
Can you do 10 years?
Straw vote.
I'm good with 10, Mayor.
Can you do
Don't
10?
ask me.
You don't want to, but you could do 10.
I can do that.
Can you do 10?
Yes, sir.
Is that what your ordinance says?
Yes, sir. It's a 10-year franchise, period.
Is,
You can turn it into a 15 or a 20 at the council's option.
have we had first reading?
We did.
Yes.
Good. Then that is what we're going to vote on Wednesday morning.
Okay.
And again, we like to bring completely thought-out solutions to you. This one defied that, and I just thank you for your engagement on the issue. We look forward to seeing you Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock.
So we're not gonna have council comments? Or
We
you
are
good
gonna
with
have-
it?
don't need those.
Is that what you're saying?
I was going to say meeting adjourned. No, I'll do council comments because this is my favorite part of the meeting. I get to sit back and so I'm just going to switch it all up. Karen, would you like to start?
It's still a couple of code enforcement issues going on over on Old Mill and Morgan Mill with some parking up in the,
That same area?
but actually the majority of the folks have figured out how to park in their driveway. It's just actually a couple that's not, but still, I still ask for the, what committee are you on? Traffic committee, to still take a look at it and see why that one street has no parking on both sides of the street for them, because they don't have too much option, but
Yeah, they really
nevertheless.
don't. Oh, and also, we had assured the council that on the next council meeting, we would have representatives of the developer of
Anderson.
Anderson Farms, and they will be present and looking forward to answering all your questions.
And I think they have done, because Mr. Anderson came by to talk to me, and that they had done, right after the meeting, they had started doing some work to try to correct the problems.
Yeah,
And it's
they're-
been blessed, we've not had a lot of rain either,
Right,
so
right.
it's been really good.
They're actually looking forward to answering the questions and are willing to come here and do that. Because they think they have the answers, which makes it a lot easier to stand up and take the questions. Connie, anything?
I would just like to say that, working with Devin and Andrew, we have moved forward on Derby Estates and the easements, where there were 14 of them when we got them all signed, but 3, and we just have additional signatures to get, but we're well on our way to hopefully be able to get that done before the end of the year. That's our goal. We're moving right along.
That's a big deal. Judy Giannacio and Connie took it upon themselves to get all the
You
easements
told me
done
that
for
the other
us.
day, so
Anything else, Connie?
I would like to ask, and I was gonna shoot it in an email, but I'll just ask it out here, that you might consider having the going back and trying to find that franchise ordinance on the gas thing, and the YouTube, and shoot it out to all of us, so that we can all look at it, please.
Okay,
Thank you. That's all.
we'll do. Chuck?
Got one thing, and we may have already talked about this once before, but it has to do with Providence Christian Academy and the road in front of their school between there and the park. I was approached about that again. Did we talk about that, Lauren?
we've discussed it, and that road belongs to,
Is that the real bad road?
it's the one that you turn in right by where they do the playground. They're talking about the kids on the playground, traffic running backwards and forth.
Is that where that storage units are, right
No,
there?
that's back,
That's
that's
on the
the
other
one that
side.
runs out. We're talking
Oh.
about the one that you turn right there, as you come in McDonald's, take a right, you go
Oh.
up that main road. We paved that, didn't we?
He said we didn't.
Like right in front of the playground?
We've not paved it.
the road
Or is
in
that
there.
PC, that's PCA's property?
Yeah.
So here's the question they got, if that's their property, why can't they do something as far as stopping that traffic? Am I interrupting you, Chuck? Is that what you
Well,
want
it's
to
a
know?
school zone, basically, and the little kids, the kindergartners and preschoolers go across the road to the playground. They're playing in the playground.
And there's one of the.
And we have cars speeding
Yep.
through there to get around, to bypass the traffic signal or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they're going up there turning right, going right by the storage buildings.
Right. It's to keep from going to
Coming in
that
that way.
intersection where Super America is.
Right.
And if it's private property, why can't they put a gate up and say,
I
look,
think that
it's
has something to do
during
with
school
our
hours,
part,
we're
John.
closed?
I think we need to do some homework, Chuck. If it's a public thoroughfare, we won't be able to block it. But I think we need to figure out.
Well, no, we don't
what
want to block
is.
it. But it's their property.
But they should be able to protect the children the way
Right,
we want
that's,
to.
that, we brought that before, and I think the comment was made that the fire trucks, they wanted to put a gate on the other end, the fire trucks had to get through without locked gates.
We'll look into that. It really does come down to, is that, regardless of the ownership, you got two concepts. You got ownership, who owns it, who's responsible for paving it, and does the public have the right to drive on it? Is
That's
it
the
public
question.
or private? And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, almost with certainty, that it is a public thoroughfare, a privately maintained public
Public
thoroughfare. So,
Where we ran into this concept just recently in a real high-profile way was on Giddings Drive, or Memorial Drive. I learned way after the fact that Georgetown College owns
Giddings.
Memorial Drive, even though it is a public thoroughfare. And there's a real critical legal distinction there about the way we use it with Georgetown College. But that deserves some homework, Chuck. We'll be glad to look into that.
I mean, it's a issue where if Georgetown College owns that property, could they decide to do something else with it besides use it as a thoroughfare? Just like if we have a street, we can close that street if we want to.
Right, the college can't close Memorial Drive. In fact, the old timers, there were some funny old laws on the books that were paid attention to back then. Back in the 30s and 40s, I'm told that Georgetown College made sure they closed that street one day a year, completely, just to maintain their record of that was not the city street, and they would close it periodically. That's not required anymore, but we had some pretty long conversations with Georgetown College about our ability to stage parades there and our ability to have 5K routes there. And Chief, we went through a bunch of hoops to make sure that we did not intrude on their ability to use their street.
there
So
are,
we need to do some homework to really answer your question.
there are probably some practical things that from a privately owned street standpoint that they could do to help alleviate that problem. But I'm relatively certain that does not include blocking off that street.
What if they decide to restructure their parking lot? It's not really a street, it's a parking lot.
Well, but you are correct, except that it is a street. So you'll probably see in the plat that they've dedicated that as a through street. But let us do the homework first. There's a possibility, I won't say no, but the common laws on public use of rights of way and roads is pretty clear. After a certain point in time, the public has the right to use it. And a private property owner that owns it cannot say, you can't drive on here.
The biggest thing Chuck's bringing up, though, is it's a major safety issue.
Yeah.
Major.
Oh.
Because you got 2 and 3 year old, 2 and 3 year old kid being held by a couple ladies walking across there, and you got cars busting up through there.
I was asked, are we gonna wait till the child gets killed before we do anything?
Right.
Or allow them to do anything? I mean, technically, I told them, I said, man, if it's my property, I'd go in there and do what I wanted to do to it. And then let somebody try to stop
They
it.
asked me that, and the answer I got, they could not block it off.
And it doesn't mean something like a speed bump. You know, we don't put speed bumps on city streets, but if that turns out to not be a city street, then a private property owner can probably do that.
Yeah, they already have some speed
Already
bumps.
speed bumps. I should know that, I drive over it.
Yeah, Andrew, you go up
Bless
there.
the Lord.
But if in answer to anybody's question that would ask a question of that type, no, it is not our intention for a child to be hurt first. I think simply asking that question is outrageous.
Well, you gotta look at their position on it.
I am looking at their
Okay.
position.
The other thing was, what about speed limits and police patrol on it? That was another subject brought up about it.
Yeah.
Can the police patrol a private drive?
If it is a public thoroughfare, yes, they can.
Okay, and what about a speed limit?
There's, if a city street is not marked, there's already a 25 mile an hour speed limit.
We have some spots in town that's lower than that.
15.
Yeah, and I don't know, if y'all have tried to drive 15 versus 25 miles an hour,
Hard to do.
it's gonna be tough to enforce a 15 mile an hour speed limit.
It's right there by Garth.
It's by the Episcopal Church, you know, as you go down by that daycare, it's 15.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm all for enforcement, but Chief, I just want you all to have a fighting chance to,
Oh, yeah, if it's not posted, it's 25, but, and we have to check with the county attorney, make sure they support us like they do how they for traffic enforcement.
The reason why they do that by the Episcopal Church is because it's a hill.
It's the little daycare down there, isn't it?
Right, but when you're
It's
going down the
wind
hill,
down
you
the
have a
hill.
tendency to go quicker, so they
Yes.
want you to be at 15, so that when you get at 25, I'm just saying.
It's a little crosswalk, and kids and parents are crossing it all the time, so.
one of the favorite things I get to do is go talk to kindergartners at PCA. So
Rita,
I'm
you be
aware
coming
of
to
the
your
area
class.
and the concern, and we're happy to do some homework and see if we can get you better answers to explore what their options can be.
Okay.
Anything else? Mark?
I'm good.
David? Marvin?
No, sir.
Ellie?
One little thing, little bitty thing, when can possibly we find out who can handle the tree trimming away from the streetlights and stuff up on West Main? Could we see if Public Works could do that, or?
If they can't, we can hire a tree service.
Well, hopefully we can use our guys to do that.
Yeah, they're a little shorthanded right now, but
Okay.
we're hiring some.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay, it's still kind of dark up there, and I know we're trying to do more things with streetlights.
We sure are.
We are, and
By
I'm
the way,
aware.
Kyle did ask me to report to the council that he has written the letter to KU, giving KU the green light to install all of the lights that they are responsible for installing. So
Good.
that is occurring. And then we verified with the tariffs that are on file with the Public Service Commission do give us the right to choose our own lighting source in the future if we choose not to use either KU's product or KU's LEDs. We got a letter of concern since we were talking about potentially getting more light through using some LED products, and I never would have dreamed. We got a letter from the ham radio operators of Scott County, and apparently LED lights vibrate at a frequency
Messes are
that interrupts ham radio operators. Some do.
Some do.
So we've put that letter in the file, and when we get to the point of working with a vendor, we'll ask them to stay away from those particular frequencies. Another issue that we're working on, and we will continue to work on, we've worked for some time with QX.net to improve internet service for some businesses, and even some residences can use another company called SkyCat that can download QX.net's wholesale feed and retail it to folks. We get a lot of inquiries from people that would like to use QX.net's service, and they think all their problems would go away. Well, the situation would be much improved if we would allow them to put an antenna on our water tower. And people say, why couldn't you do that? It's perfect. Well, the real specific reason is QX.net's frequency that they use for broadband transmission is exactly the same frequency as our telemetry on the water tower and the water system.
Messed it up.
So we cannot
That's the reason.
do that. Now, maybe one side or another can change frequencies, I don't know, but if you get asked that question, there's a very practical reason why we haven't done that yet.
I did get a phone call about that last week.
Yeah.
Want to know why we wouldn't let them put their transponder or what, repeater or whatever it is up on the tower. I had
Yeah,
no idea they'd be using
now
the
you
same
got an
frequency.
We don't,
We
we've been pursuing that for a while, but there's a good technical reason why we can't right now. So, if there's nothing else to come before the council, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.